as a kid, I grew up hearing two types of stories. Holy Ghost stories, like where the Holy Ghost had moved and God had done something great, and it's because I grew up in a pastor's home. So you hear like all of those type of stories, and all of these stories about what God had done, right? I mean, and I loved them. I love to hear the stories. Still love to hear the stories. I can't get enough. Like even if I've heard a story, it's like I'll sit and listen again. This is a good story, you know. And I love those stories. I also heard another kind of story, maybe a little bit more familiar to you, fish stories. You ever hear fish stories? That's because my dad, who's right there, was a preacher and a fisherman, and we're not quite sure which one he did more of. But he was definitely a lover of both. And one of the stories I grew up hearing when I was thinking about this series, and I was kind of coming up with this image of faith in the fog, and it immediately reminded me of this story I grew up hearing where as a kid, I wasn't always allowed to go because sometimes it was on school days or whatever, and my dad had gathered at the river with Hubert, with Roy, and a couple of different ones, and they were waiting because the fog was thick at Houghton's camp. Right? I mean, so thick. And I've seen thick fog, but, according to the story, which fish stories are always true, according to the story, that the fog was so thick that the guys were really scared to kind of go out. Because, I mean, there's barges on the river, there's other boats on the river, and even though you have lights on your boat, we don't always see those things, and you never know what's floating in the Warrior River. Could be a tree, you never know. And so they had this debate on the bank about, getting out there. And it seemed to be the day was getting, later on. And so my dad said, I'm going to go. And they said, you're crazy. You can't see. He's like, no, it'll be fine. I'll just go really slowly till I hit the bank. You kind of cross over the main river and you hit the bank. And he said, and then I'll just stay by the bank and I'll make my way up. And they said, that's a crazy plan. You're going to be regretting it. You could have stayed here and just been comfortable, but you're going to be out there trying to navigate whatever. Preacher, you do what you're going to do. So he got in the boat, as the story goes, and I remember as a kid, he kind of went down across the river. He couldn't see in front of the boat, but just waiting, and all of a sudden, sure enough, he hits the bank. Well, now he's got where he wants to go. Now, because he knows the river, he knows, okay, the slough I want to go to is just right up. So then he goes, along the way, makes it up. He said, I had a phenomenal morning. Like the fishing was great. They were biting, and he said, you could see your quill. That's about all you could see. And he said, pretty soon the fog started to lift, and I heard the motor starting from Houghton's camp. And he said, sure enough, here come Roy and Hubert. And they're coming in the boat, and they're pulling up. And they said, what? So did you catch anything? He said, well, I've got 17 in the boat. They're like, what? It's just this, what are you talking about? I'm 17 in the boat. And it was the difference of, sometimes you just got to step out in faith, and sometimes you have to realize that you know what's there even when you can't see it because you've been here before. And I'm telling you, in my Christian walk, there have been moments where it seems as though the clouds have set in, the fog has set in, and it's almost unrecognizable in my spiritual landscape. But I know the God who loves me, and I know what he's done for me. And I know the stories of all of those that he's worked in. And I know the stories that he's had in my life. And I begin to trust those things. And I know that, okay, I'm going to go here. And then I'm going to hit up against the shore. And I'm going to hit up against this truth that I know. And then once I realize that, and sometimes for me it's been a song, you're just like, okay, it seems so dark, but man, when I sing the song, it reminds me of who Christ is, what he's done. And you sing the song, or you read the Bible verse, and you hit that bank, and now you know where you are, and you continue on, and God begins to continue to do great things in your life.